Okay, slight sidebar, because this is so important for rhetoric and is not covered in this book. Okay, so I like that this particular book covers non-Western rhetoric more than others, but I don't like that this one missed the Gutenberg Press, because the Gutenberg Press is so important to rhetorical theory development. So the Gutenberg Press is the first printing press developed and made available at around 1440. So we've had the printing of paper for a very long period of time. And what the Gutenberg Press did, especially because it was developed so that we could share the Bible. Individuals started to have, even poor individuals, have a little bit of extra income so they could afford some books. And by some books, I mean one. They had the Bible. And they wanted their own copies of it so they could read along with the sermons, or they could read passages during church services. Lots of reasons that individuals across Europe and into England at the time wanted their own copies of the Bible. But this also meant that ideas could be shared, but they were shared differently because the spread of them was completely changed by the Gutenberg Press, completely. So there are Martin Luther, who used to, we all probably know him from history because he tacked up the issues that he had with the Catholic Church. Some of the things that he did too, when he tacked up the theses, here are my issues, and then the church would make modifications or they wouldn't, and there was negotiation on which ones they took up and they didn't. But you know, negotiation, little teacher, is still not a thing yet. It's getting there. We're getting so close to that. But one of the things that happened is those theses took a while to get to other villages because of the spread of paper and what it takes to get paper out. And so then little revolts would happen in villages at basically times that Martin Luther wasn't expecting, because word of mouth spread in a very specific way that by that time period people understood. Paper spread completely differently. Circulation was so new to them. You know, and for many of you, this might not have been in your lifetime, the internet and the circulation of ideas on the internet completely changed from when I was a child to now. Completely changed. So even in my lifetime, we've seen something similar, revolution in information circulation, similar to the Gutenberg Press. It had not existed prior to the Gutenberg Press, and before the internet, the Gutenberg Press was the major thing. I think the only other huge change was the ability to make color and to include photos, but the printing was still the same, and the printing was still similar, and the circulation was still similar. But because we now have circulation shifts, we now need people to be able to read. And people, because they had a copy of a Bible and they heard their preacher or their pastor reading the Bible to them, they learned to read the Bible, and then that developed their baseline literacy skills so they could start to read the theses that were circulated. So now we've got educated, literate masses who have slight access to paper, who are gaining access to arguments and information at times that are unexpected by the orator who's putting them up or the writer who's putting them up. And so we have this mass confusion in this time period, and so much of it is rhetorical because, and this is where Aristotle comes back in. So what we didn't talk about when we talked about Aristotle, we know ethos, pathos, and logos, but one of his major components is also kairos, which is timing. So it's K-A-I-R-O-S. The timing matters. All of a sudden, and this is where we definitely see style and delivery be the focus, and a little bit, especially when we're pulling from the Greek rhetors, kairos again, the timing even of a piece of paper matters. When do, oops, my notes are falling. When do people get this in their hands, and how does that impact or change? When do they see the information, and how does that impact or change? How do they access, and what does that look like? I mean, everything that we think about now with user experience, how do I interact with my device, and what does that look like, started with the Gutenberg Press. And the way the Gutenberg Press really fundamentally changed our understanding of rhetoric because of circulation, because of when audiences had access to information and what the requirements for that access were, which is back up to literacy. So that is all going on, and that's a part of what's changing. So I know that the chapter is focusing on Christianization and then belletristic and elocutionary, but right there in the middle of it, towards the tail end and in that shift, the Gutenberg Press changed everything, and it still does.